Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending upon where you are in the world. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. See a few people still joining, so we'll get started here in just a moment. All right, folks, before we get into today's agenda, I just want to again welcome you and thank you for joining me and our esteemed guest panelists today. We're trying something a little bit new with the format. We're going to try and make this very interactive, and so we have a couple of poll questions we're going to throw at you just to kind of involve you all, our customers here. So I was told that all the technical issues were worked out in 2020, so we should be smooth sailing. Okay, let's get into the agenda. But first, I want to thank Stephen Heck of USLI for joining us. He's going to do the bulk of today's presentation in terms of the content. And we are, of course, discussing nonprofit. And we've billed this session today as a look at a new product. And in the spirit of transparency, it's not that the forms were completely rewritten from scratch, but there have been a number of product enhancements in the recent past. And so combined with the opportunity that we see, we just felt like it's, just about qualifies as new product. So there you go. And I also want to welcome Jonathan Chernoff. He's going to be giving us a demonstration on Instant Quote. So I won't steal his thunder. He's a specialist in that arena. And let's get into the agenda, shall we? Okay. So we're going to discuss what is that opportunity that I mentioned just a moment ago. We're going to give a few definitions so that you know exactly what we're talking about, what we're looking for here. We're going to talk about why coverage. We're going to talk about the products that we can provide. And then, of course, we're going to talk about methods of quoting and next steps. And then, of course, Q&A. So as always, everybody's in listen-only mode, but we do value your input and your questions. If at any time you have a question, go ahead and enter those in the question section of the dashboard. And we will probably get to those at the end just in case they're answered along the way. So as I mentioned, we have our first poll question. Pretty quick, right? So let's go ahead and launch that. And we want to get your feedback. So now's your chance. All right. Stephen, tell me if I have the wrong one up here. I think I got the right one.
You're good. That looks good.
Okay. All right. So time to cast your vote, everybody, and then we'll discuss. I think we're going to move directly into the second poll question, which kind of piggybacks on this one. So be prepared for that, right? All right. Looks like just about everybody voted. Not everybody, but looks like it's slowing down. So, Stephen, are you able to see those results?
I don't think I can.
Okay. I tell you what, I will verbalize them for the group here. So just so everybody can hear. How about that? So the question, of course, was how many fast food restaurants are there in the country? Nobody voted for 50,000. We didn't fool anyone. Nobody voted for 200,000. So 43% of the folks voted for 1.5 million. 57% voted for 10 million. Shall we go to the next question, see how they fare there?
Let's do that.
All right. All right, folks, this one may not surprise you, but here you go. Cast your votes. Ah, it's a different spread already.
They may feel they've been duped.
Right. It's settling in. All right, just one more moment. If you haven't voted, now's your chance. I think some folks are shy too at this point. We're a couple percent short here. All right, let's close this one out. So, Stephen, to the question, how many registered nonprofits are there in the country? We got nobody answering 50,000. Nobody liked that answer in either case. 14% voted for 200,000. 71% picked 1.5 million, and 14% of folks said 10 million. So let's go ahead and close this out. So how does that comport with reality? Talk to us about those results.
Yeah, so thanks everyone again for your participation. I was a little nervous, I'm not going to lie, before the poll results, because I didn't know if you maybe, have, everybody has access to Google these days, so pretty easy to, probably Google that answer for you. But yeah, so I think the idea here is that, so the correct answer is 200,000 for the fast food restaurants, and then 1.5 million for registered nonprofits. So I think you illustrated right there pretty well what the perception is of the nonprofit industry really as a whole, especially when it compares to the opportunity, if you will, of some other industry sectors. Now, obviously, nonprofits is not the end all be all, but we get this question quite a bit that, is it even worth it to go after nonprofit business? Is it even worth it to go after these social services and human services? Like, what does that look like? And I think right there it illustrates that idea that you probably drive around and you think you see a McDonald's or a Jack in the Box or a Wendy's on every street corner, and when in fact you look at the real numbers, and there's, what is that, like 7 times the amount of registered nonprofits in the country than there are fast food restaurants. Similarly, we've looked at like specialty coffee shops, for example. There's about 50 or 60,000 of those. So you can just see the amount of kind of discrepancy, if you will, if you really just kind of look at that just from another industry standpoint. Churches, for example, there's about 350,000 churches in the country. So these are just numbers to illustrate that there is quite a bit of business out there, that if you're not going after it already, it's definitely available. And we have, our average premium at USLI is about $2,000. So if you look, if we wrote every registered nonprofit in the country, that's $3 billion in opportunity. So hopefully you get the idea that there's quite a bit of that available to you and available to everybody that wants to go after that type of business.
That is eye-opening. So
yeah, Mike,
so Stephen,
I'll keep going here.
Yeah.
As far as just what we've seen on our end with our results. So I think it's interesting, because I was actually just talking to my wife about this, that what is it? Are we just seeing this business because of what's happened in the past 12 months, or has there really been historical data to show that this is around? This will sustain itself through these times. What's interesting about this segment, this market segment about nonprofits and social services, and we'll kind of define what that looks like here in the next slide, but it is resilient. We've had double-digit growth, not only in nonprofits, but especially in these social services for the past decade. And it's really, if you look at the underlying statistics, I've got a few here. I won't go through everything, but 30 million children live in the United States that are in low-income families. 20 million adults need substance abuse treatment. 1 in 5 people live with mental health issues. There's over 550,000 homeless folks in the country, unfortunately. These are just pretty grim statistics, but these last 12 months has really exacerbated that problem, as you can imagine. I don't have to go into all the details, right? But I mean, the unemployment rose to the highest it's ever been, at least in the past, several decades, up to 15%. And it really targeted a lot of the vulnerable population. So not only is it, again, because what we've seen the past 12 months, but we have seen this growth in these industries, and it will continue, unfortunately. I also think there's just a lot of more awareness now, a lot of awareness about people's issues, and people want to get help. There's a lot, there's just a lot more visibility, and people are being more vocal, and money's pouring in. We see that the statistics show that 3 out of 4 Americans are donating more or donating the same amount than they were pre-pandemic. So there's money coming in, there's a lot of demand, there's a lot of need, and there's a lot of organizations that are really stepping up to fill that gap and to help these folks out.
So when we talk about social services, if we can make a segue here, what types of organizations are we looking at? What are we talking about?
Absolutely. So it's a good question. I think, from our perspective, what is a nonprofit, right? How are we defining it? Oh, can you hear me okay? I think I'm getting a little choppy on my end.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool.
If anybody in the audience has trouble, just type in a message. But yeah, we can hear you.
Let me know. Yeah, I think sometimes the video gets a little choppy, but the audio seems to be okay. So I'll just push forward here. So we define nonprofits. We don't require at USLI, we don't require official 501c3 or 501 designations to be tax exempt. That doesn't necessarily have to qualify for a nonprofit. For us, it just means that any profit the business is making, or any donations and all that they're receiving, that they all just go back into the business. It also doesn't mean an organization can't make money. It just means that, or that they can't pay their employees. It just means that any extra money that they have, they're going to be putting back into the business. So if you look at it from that perspective, we have quite a variety of different nonprofits we look at on our team. In regards to social services and human service business, we have kind of put it in different tranches, and there's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot of different classes, and they're kind of spelled out for you there generally in the classifications that they can fall under. So we have like counseling and referral groups. Those would be like I said, these folks that are dealing with mental health issues, depression, anxiety are skyrocketing right now. I think there's a poll I saw, about 50% of Americans are experiencing some sort of negative health mental effect over the past 12 months. So a huge opportunity there, fortunately or unfortunately, but there's a lot of mental health counseling, group counseling, marriage counseling, that kind of thing. We also do food and clothing distribution. So those look like your food banks, your food pantries, Meals on Wheels, thrift stores, soup kitchens, senior services and services for the disabled. Those would be like your senior centers. There's group homes, vocational workshops, a lot of different types of services and programs that are available to the folks that unfortunately have certain disabilities, whether it's mental, physical, emotional. We can really do any kind of program or service under the sun with regards to those, as well as residential facilities, which are kind of considered under that group home class, but we also do homeless shelters, halfway houses, abused adult facilities, transitional housing, and then of course we get into youth services, which is similar in idea to like the seniors, except obviously the audience or the clients or youth. So those would be like after school programs, STEM classes, and youth mentoring. And so again, there's quite a variety of different classes that we consider under this breadth. Typically, we do the nonprofit on our side. We can actually also consider for-profit. So J.E. Brown and USLI have solutions for both for-profit and nonprofit organizations that fall under these classes.
Gotcha. Well, I think we actually have another poll question coming up. Is that right?
I think we do.
So. All right. Let's get to it, shall we? All right, folks. You're up again. Let me launch this third one. All right. All right, so this question is, of course, why would a nonprofit and social service organization specifically need insurance coverage? it might be a softball, but I want to make sure everybody's paying attention here. Stephen, early indications are that they're going to get it right. This one is not as tricky, I don't think. But what's interesting about that? Yeah, go ahead.
I just said I should have put the correct answer as A. Maybe that would have tripped people up.
Right. For those multiple choice wizards, yeah. No, what's interesting though is okay. So I think we get the gist here. Most people, I think, have the correct answer here. Some folks are saying that they only need it for premises and property liability claims, things like that, right? So premises liability and property. 14% of people voted that way. But 86%, the overwhelming majority, said they have similar loss exposures as for-profit, entities. And so maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thanks for the participation in that. So a pretty self-explanatory there, but I think they're all sort of correct answers in the sense that any of those exposures are insurable, and it may be a reason that you see the need for nonprofit. So what is a primary reason? There could, like I said, it could be any one of them, but at the end of the day, from a loss perspective and an exposure perspective, a nonprofit is extremely vulnerable and has very similar loss exposures, if not even more so than for-profit businesses. So, we talk about whether or not it's even worth it to get in this space. Well, obviously there's a huge opportunity. Then you talk about what are we even talking about here? What kind of organizations? And then now it's that next question, which is, do they need insurance coverage? And so that really is, they absolutely need the coverage, and they need it because they have so many different types of loss exposures. And they work, like we were talking about earlier, they work with vulnerable population, typically seniors, youth, the disabled, substance abuse, homeless. There's a huge population they work with that have, a really large need for coverage, the coverage that we can offer, and the coverage that's available through our product. They don't have the robust HR departments or business management departments that for-profit companies do. So obviously, the decision-making process is a lot more difficult for some nonprofits. They just don't have the budget for it. So they're a lot more vulnerable in that aspect. There's a lot of transparency with nonprofits, so you can look up their operations and their mission statement and their financials. So with how they're spending their money, that's not available typically with a lot of for-profit businesses, especially the smaller ones. So there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack, but there's quite a variety of different coverages that we do offer through our product. And so just a few of them are listed there. So we have a separate limit for the general liability, the errors and omissions, the abuse and molestation, directors and officers, employment practices liability. Some other coverages that aren't listed on there are property coverage, crime coverage, inland marine coverage. We can do all of those different coverages for these nonprofits. And just to illustrate a couple of these, so like we had an E&O claim where there was it was like an after-school program, and there was a volunteer that was he was doing a crosswalk. He was helping facilitate the crosswalk for a lot of kids. There was a distracted driver that ended up hitting a kid, and we actually got pulled into the E&O. Our coverage got pulled in because they constituted the volunteer doing the logistics for the crosswalk as the rendering of a professional service, if you will, as being a crossguard crosswalk. We actually paid up almost $500,000 in that claim. So, it's who knows what can be considered E&O. Typically, we usually see it in like maybe a community center. Like right now, there's a lot of community centers and community outreach groups that are doing COVID testing, even some COVID shots. So if they've got like a registered nurse or someone that's volunteering on behalf of their organization, and they're putting the shot on the arm or doing the test, that could be constituted as E&O. So there's, a lot of these groups maybe they have that slip and fall, they have an event, they have a premises liability exposure, but then maybe we're not thinking of the other coverages or the other exposures they could be open to. And I think we can all understand what an abuse and molestation loss exposure looks like. And then directors and officers, just especially with the visibility of how nonprofits are spending their money. That opened up a whole bunch of different claims, especially with, in regards to misappropriation of funds and that kind of thing. So we do, again, provide coverage for all of these different types of exposures, and we can do it all in one package. A couple of the things that were listed here were, so the blanket event coverage, that's something as the states start opening up, especially, we have a component where we provide their event coverage for no additional charge. So, excuse me, the previous question, the poll question had referenced about event liability and certificates of insurance for events. That could be the way it comes into your office, or that could be how you get the first, you get the first contact with a nonprofit is through an event. We can easily flip that to a blanket event annual policy, and you don't have to worry about touching it 100 times. So just keep that in mind, because the blanket event coverage is a huge component to what we do. In fact, a lot of nonprofits aren't aware of the different exposures we just talked about. They more just think that, okay, we're going to do a fundraising event, we need a certificate of insurance. So you can turn that around and easily flip that to an annual policy. And obviously J.E. Brown and USLI will help you through that process. And then with just this defense outside the limit and lifetime occurrence reporting provision, full acts coverage, that's all the directors and officers in the employment practices liability. We're happy to dig into those coverages and details of those, after the webinar, but just know that, nonprofits still have to fight, just like a for-profit business has to fight any sort of allegation. And a lot of times they do have to go to court. That defense outside the limit means it doesn't erode the limits on the policy. So it's essentially unlimited coverage, to defend a lot of these harassment, sexual abuse, those kind of claims. So we do have that coverage feature on our policies.
That is interesting. I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but some might be asking, well, what about a hammer clause, and how do you guys treat that?
Sure. So we have a soft hammer. Again, the details we can, go into with our directors and officers and employment practices team. Could probably tell you 100 more different features of our product, but we do have a soft clause. I think the important idea with a lot of this is that there's an incentive when a carrier puts these types of coverage features within their product. We're incentivizing ourselves basically to get the claim, or to fight the claim and to get it resolved quickly, because we don't want to just sit there and just continue to badger back and forth, if you will. We want to make sure that we have skin in the game, and that we're going to get this resolved as quickly as possible, because a lot of these professional liability claims, as you know, have longer tails than just a property claim, for example. So we want to make sure that we're getting these resolved quickly and effectively, and obviously with the right mindset. I think USLI does a great job. Obviously, working for the company, I can say this, but I do think we do a great job in really trying to work with customers and the insureds on trying to get the best solution possible, no matter what. So.
Yeah, well, so for those of us who are sold and now want to charge forth and go after this business, where's the pricing start for the package? And what is the rating basis, just as kind of a secondary question?
Absolutely. So typically, pricing for that full package, so for the GL, E&O, abuse and molestation coverage, that's kind of under our general liability framework. $500 in California. Other states, it's $735. These are minimum premiums, but $500 starting in California, $735 for other states. And then D&O, employment practices liability, that it's under our management liability coverage. So it just it will again depend on the different options they're choosing, but we can typically do those for about $700 or $800 So if they want the entire full package for the GL, E&O, abuse and molestation, management liability, they're probably looking at about $1,000. And then obviously, there are much larger organizations, so it just will depend on on their exposure and the locations and that kind of thing. And again, we can add property too. So if they've got a property, or a building, that will just depend on the limit that's chosen. As far as rating basis, from a GL perspective, we rate based off square footage almost all the time. It will depend on the type of ministry they're involved in or the outreach they're involved in. So just provide the relevant information if you can, whatever that may look like. So it might be receipts, it could be number of beds, it could be number of meals served, that kind of thing. But generally speaking, as long as you have the square footage, we can typically get you a quote. D&O and the EPLI, those are based on revenue and employee count respectively. But a lot of these smaller nonprofits, it's the same pricing under $1 million. And a lot of the nonprofits don't have that many employees. So we're typically at minimum premium for a lot of this type of coverage.
Gotcha. All right. Well, it's time to move into the next section here. Stephen, thank you so much for all of that information. We may bring you back in here depending upon the questions that we get from the audience. And folks, if you have questions, you're welcome to enter those at any time. I'm going to bring in Jonathan Chernoff here, who's going to talk about instant quotes. So Jonathan, you with us?
I'm here.
Fantastic.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks, Michael and Stephen. A lot of great information. So we learned a lot of great info there about social services. So now what I want to do is talk to you all about how you can get those quotes turned around most quickly and most efficiently. So, when you're thinking about USLI for these products you heard about earlier, or maybe even other products as well, what we like to describe as the fastest way to get a quote in the industry is our phone quoting platform. So what you all have available to you is, again, the ability to quote over the phone with the USLI underwriter through J.E. Brown. So that number you see on the screen, 866-712-6781. When you call that number, we'll know that you're calling through J.E. Brown, and hopefully we'll be able to quote a risk for you over the phone just by asking a few eligibility questions. So we have a whole team of underwriters, definitely more than 65 at this point, but they are completely dedicated to quoting over the phone for you. So really great team. And how the process works is, if we're able to quote a risk for you, we send it to your inbox directly, in addition to a pre-filled application. So really all you have to do is get the application signed and verified, get it over your contact to J.E. Brown for binding, and that's the whole process. So very simple, very easy to use.
So Jonathan, what happens if you can't quote it by phone in those unlikely circumstances?
Great question. So yeah, so again, when you call us, we're not always going to be able to quote everything for you, right? So if you do call us and it's not a risk we're able to quote at USLI, what we do is we will actually transfer you back over to J.E. Brown on the phone, and they will remarket that risk for you to any other number of carriers that they have access to. So there's not going to be a situation where you call us, it's not a fit, and we say, hey, appreciate it, try us again next time. We're going to get you over to J.E. Brown, and they're going to do their best to find a home for you on their end as well. So just because it's not a fit for us at USLI doesn't mean we're not going to try our best to find a home for that risk for you.
Awesome. Let's press on. I think we have yet another poll question. This is our last one, folks. We won't make you work too much harder here. Last one. Here you go. All right, this one I'm gonna bet we have more of a split here on this one. Not so much a unanimous.
Okay, let's see.
Not so much unanimity. All right, there we go. It would help if I launched it, huh? There you go. You guys should be able to see it now.
Looking good.
So question, how much higher are the bind ratios for instant quote submissions versus in-house submissions? So we're talking phone versus, you fill out your traditional app and you send it in. Yep, definitely a bit more of a split here.
Those are some tightly
All
grouped.
right. Yeah. Oh, actually, it shifted a bit. Somebody changed their answer. Okay. All right. So far, and this might shift a bit, but so far, yeah, we've got 40% voting for 8 and 15% and 20% voting for 10. And it's shifting now to third in each of them. Oh boy. All right, so we'll close this out. Thank you guys for rendering your opinion there. So, Jonathan, I'm going to close this. Go ahead and tell us the answer here.
Absolutely. So the answer is 10%. So when quoting with USLI, when you're quoting over the phone versus sending in a paper application, we see a bind ratio as high as 10% more. So what we chalk that up to really is just the humanized experience. So when you're calling in, you're talking to a person, you're able to talk out a risk, figure out the X's and O's, what's going on there. There's less back and forth, via email, which, I'm sure all of us want to avoid as much of that as possible. So that's where we really chalk that up to. So again, just want to encourage you there as you think about using this phone quoting platform, that those are the facts. That's what we see, 10% higher on the bind ratio. So that's a great benefit. Some additional ones as well is it's really going to save you time. You don't have to fill out an accord form when quoting over the phone. So I've yet to meet an agent that likes accord forms. If that's anyone here, I apologize, but I've yet to meet that agent. So you don't have to do that with us. And the average call time is really just between 5 and 7 minutes. And honestly, I've done these calls where it's less than that. It could be less than 5 minutes. So really saves you time. We know that you don't want to spend a ton of time on these accounts. You want to move on to the next one. So we want to help you to do that. And just flexibility, when you can reach us. So we are an East Coast company, so we're open a little bit earlier for you all there on the West Coast, but 4 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Saturday. So that's when you're available to reach us over the phone. All right, so what I'm going to do now here is just do a phone quote demonstration. So I'm going to call that 866 number. I'm going to get an underwriter on the phone, and we're going to go through what it sounds like to get a quote over the phone. So I'm actually going to mute you all for 1 second. I'm going to call that number, get an underwriter on the line, and allow you all to hear what that process sounds like in real time. Okay, 1 second here.
Folks, this is a great opportunity to enter any questions that you have while Jonathan tees that up. We do always encourage questions. We want to help you sell more of this business. So anything that, might move us in that direction, don't hesitate. I do see some questions here. So keep them coming.
Okay, thanks, Michael. And everyone, so we have Kristen on the line. Kristen's going to help us get a quote over the phone here for one of our classes we discussed earlier with Steven. So we're actually going to do a food bank risk here. So Kristen, do we have you?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, perfect. So yeah, Kristen, we're just looking to get a quote for a food bank. States in California as well.
All right, in California, what lines of coverage are you looking for?
We'll just do the GL and if we can.
All right, that's not a problem. Let me just get you set up right here. Okay, so we just have a food bank.
Yep.
We're just doing the general liability. What's the location address that I can use?
We'll get creative. We'll say 123 Main Street, and we'll use the zip code 90002.
All right, and limits, do you need 1 mil, 2 mil, or are there other options you're looking for?
1 mil, 2 mil would be great.
Right. And do you happen to know for how many years the risk has been at the location? This may give them opportunity for credit.
Yeah, we'll say 3 years.
Okay. All right. And do you know what the square footage is of the food bank?
Yeah, it's 1,200 square feet.
All right. Terrific. And do they have any need for any additional insureds?
Not at this time.
All right. We should be figuring out what our pricing is in one quick moment.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristen.
And looks like what we have is we have an admitted quote to United States liability. This is rating up to $690. And you'll also notice that there's going to be an excess and umbrella quote that follows that can get them to additional higher limits if they would need it.
Awesome. Okay.
And then I'll just point out real quick too, since we did the instant quote sort of version of it, there's going to be some items that we still need to verify. That'll be on the second page of the quote. We can go through those right now, but I assume you might be short on time.
Yeah, but that's a great point, Kristen. I appreciate you pointing that out.
Okay. And then the last thing I'll mention too is, as I didn't mention earlier, the general liability, which is at 1 mil, 2 mil, does include automatically a separate tower of professional E&O at 1 mil, 2 mil, and another tower of coverage of a BSML station at 1 mil, 2 mil as well, all included in that $690.
Perfect. So all three of those coverages. That's great. Well, thank you, Kristen. Really appreciate your help.
No problem. You have a fantastic day.
You as well. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, everyone. So that's the whole process. So super easy to do over the phone. We have some really, experienced underwriters who are willing to help you get those risks quoted. And we understand not every risk is created equal. So again, being able to call in, talk it through with somebody and help you get it turned around, that quickly. You can also have someone to ask, coverage questions, eligibility questions, things like that. It's just nice to have that, again, humanized experience. So, your key contacts here for J.E. Brown. So again, we mentioned, we got that quote with Kristen. Great, we have it in our inbox. Now what do we do with it? We want to get it over to our contact at J.E. Brown when we're ready to bind. So that is Pam Pearson. As you see on the screen there is her contact information. What you also have the ability to do, you have the phone quoting option. You also have the ability to quote online at jebrown.net. So if you already have credentials there, you have access to that. If not, you simply just have to register. But what you can do is go to that website, go to the USLI quoting portion of the website, and you can select those products that you want to quote over the web, and all the questions are the same. So the process is the same, the process is equal. So just wanted to give you, all of the options there as you're thinking about, quoting this type of business with us.
Thanks, Jonathan. I think it's probably a judgment call sometimes on the part of the retailer. How much complexity does it have? How familiar with the account am I? Would I prefer to talk to an underwriter? So that's definitely great to have both options. Yeah,
great point, Michael. And again, we want you all to feel as comfortable as possible quoting with us, really. And even if you choose to go through the web and you want to call in and talk it out with somebody as you're doing that, you have the option to do that as well. So again, we want to make it easy for you.
All right, gents. I think we have a couple of questions. Are we ready for that?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first question is, and folks, if you're furiously typing, don't worry, we'll stick around for a few minutes here. First question is, can I get a list of nonprofit classes? So let me ask Stephen here, do we have an exhaustive list? I mean, I know we talked about there being 200 plus, if I recall. Like, do we have a complete list, or what's a good resource for that?
There we go. Can you hear me okay? I'm having a little bit of feedback. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm all right now. So to your point, we do have marketing material. Let's put it that way. We definitely do have classes that will illustrate all the different, quite a few of the different classes, I should say, that are under this umbrella. So we can definitely get those to you. But to your point, it's probably not going to be exhaustive. Another good, thing to mention here is that I think in all the years that we've been doing this, we're noticing that a lot of folks will, categorize or classify risks differently that fall under this umbrella. So what we may call a group home, you may call an assisted living facility, or you may call a halfway house an abused shelter, or regardless. I mean, there's a lot of different types of classes that we can consider that you probably see that we may not call the same thing. The same thing with like a vocational day center, like what is that, right? But we do have a list. We have some marketing material that will put what we classify, what we call certain risks, and then we can have those conversations as well afterwards on maybe exactly what you've gotten and which classes that we would use to quote the risk.
Got it. All right. Well, that actually was another one of the questions. You kind of nailed that second one about client-facing flyers. So they were just asking about essentially customized marketing material. And so to that question, I will say yes, we can definitely customize those with your agency info, even put a logo on there if you'd like. So I would say in that instance where you're looking for that, whether it's print or electronic, get in touch with your regional sales manager at J.E. Brown. If you don't know who that is, of course, call our office and ask anyone who answers the phone, 800-955-8213. We'll be happy to help you with that. Let's see if we have any others here. Actually, maybe not too many here. Oh, I think actually, no, there is one more. So someone's asking what limits are available for the abuse and molestation coverage.
Yep, it's 1 million, 3 million. And then we can actually provide excess coverage as well for these classes. So we can go up to, I believe it's 2 million excess on top of that. So 1 mil, 3 mil for the underlying, and then excess coverage is available as well. It's a good question. We actually see, we do see a lot of those questions, especially in California, and especially in the last 12 months, there's been a lot of requirements, a lot of contract requirements, a lot of lawsuits, a lot of fear. So, and rightfully so. So we're seeing quite a bit of requests for higher limits and excess limits, which we can provide.
Yeah, it made me think, that's one of those things that none of us want to think about, no matter what the scenario and who's being, abused. But it's a coverage that can, not only help in those cases where there is real abuse or molestation, but, alleged, right? Like, I don't know if you have the stats at your fingertips, but, where someone's merely accused of those actions, and just being defended for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and again, kind of going back to the defense outside the limits, our abuse and molestation is, to get real technical here, it is defense inside with regards to the abuse and molestation. But as far as like, again, it's going to depend on the claim, but a lot of times it can actually fall, some allegations of harassment and workplace violence and that kind of thing can actually fall on the employment practices. The employment practices, actually, we do have a defense outside the limits. So to your point, either way, we're going to defend the claim, and in some instances we will defend it, and it won't impact the limit.
Right. No, it's a good distinction to make. But all right, I don't think I see any other questions. So I'm just going to wrap it up here and thank both Stephen and Jonathan very much, as well as Kristen. I think she left us, but we want to make sure we thank her for her help. Thank all of you for joining us today. We tried something a little bit differently today, actually a number of things different. Hopefully you enjoyed, hopefully you got some good information out of it. And as always, if you think of anything after today that you didn't have a chance to ask, reach out to the office, 800-955-8213. Visit us on the web at jebrown.net, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone.